Blog Talk Radio.
Alternative facts.
The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. At 12:07 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, numerous unidentified objects of unknown intent and unknown origin were detected at high altitudes over multiple locations of Earth's outer space by the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, and these objects are presumed to be some form of controlled aircraft. It is not known if more of these aircraft will arrive, or if they will attempt entering Earth's atmosphere. United States citizens are encouraged to monitor local media outlets, as more updates will follow as information becomes available. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. Attacks by the undead have been reported in several states across the country. The dead are rising from their graves and are attacking the human race. At this time, it is expected that more attacks of this nature will occur in several other states in the next few hours. The intent behind their attack is unknown at this time. It has been observed that a byte or exchange of fluids is a method of transmission. This is an extremely dangerous situation if they crave the taste of human flesh. It is not known whether this event will last for hours, days, or even longer. Stay calm, as authorities have been dispatched to deal with these creatures. An all-clear siren will be sounded when this situation is under control. Pacific Standard Time, nor is detected a long-range nuclear missile launcher. This missile is believed to be headed in the direction of all residents within a 400-mile radius of this area should seek a fallout shelter immediately.
Welcome to Within the Chaos with your host, Rodney Shortridge, and co-host, Robin Dalton.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. You can listen in by going to blogtalkradio.com/Within the Chaos, or listen in by phone. You can dial 323-870-4197. And you can also call in to ask questions to our guests at the same number, 323-870-4197. From deep within the heart of the Appalachians, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you all for listening to Within the Chaos. My name is Rodney Shortridge, and I'll be your host tonight, along with my fiery redhead co-host, Robin Dalton. Well, I hate to inform everybody, but Robin's not going to be here tonight. She's in Charleston with her grandson. They had to have a little surgery done on him, and he's doing fine. And she wanted me to tell everybody that she appreciates all the thoughts and prayers and everything for her. So tonight, our special guest is Dr. Irena Scott. Dr. Scott got her PhD at the University of Missouri College of Veterinary Medicine in physiology. She also worked as a Defense Intelligence Agency satellite photography researcher, also a physical scientist, cartographer in the DMA Aerospace Center. She's also an astronomer and author. First off, I want to say our hearts and thoughts are with all the amazing folks in the great states of Texas, Louisiana, and Florida after battling these horrible natural disasters, these hurricanes. And for all our listeners, if you could spare just a little change right now, can go a long way. If you can find a charity to help these victims, you could also donate to the Red Cross. A little bit goes a long way in times like this. I also like to give a shout out to my cousins up in Ohio, Jennifer and Joe Shortridge of 222 Paranormal. If you get a chance, check out their talk show. You can find them on Facebook under 222 Paranormal. I want to give a big shout out to the Facebook paranormal pages and UFO pages and such and crypto that allows us to post their shows to their pages and helping us get the word out about our amazing guests. And also creative photography. Sorry, it's been a long day. Creative Photography Club will be hosting a Halloween costume themed photo shoot located at Tractor Supply and Pound and Mill on Saturday, October 28th, starting at 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Sunday, October 29th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Also, get a chance. Wonder Woman will be there and get your photos done or without her. Everyone is welcome to dress up in your best and scariest Halloween costume to have your photos done. Couples, individuals, family, children, and pets. Pets must be on the leash the entire time during the photo shoots. To purchase a Halloween photo theme CD for $20. This includes 15 to 20 different images, which equals 3 to 4 different poses with couples, individuals, family members, children, and pets. With each purchase, you will receive a copyright release form for your Halloween costume photos, so you can get them printed, use them for email or social media sites, or any type of Halloween themed cards that you'd like to have, and so many other gifts. For more information, contact Angie Casey at 276-210-0355, or you can contact me at 276-970-1456. And you also can check us out on Facebook under Creative Photography. I would ask Robin, so how's her week, but we know she's been busy, so I won't drag it out anymore. Let's go ahead and get the doctor on and see how she's doing tonight. Hello, Dr. Scott. How are you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Like I said, it's been a long day, but I made it through it.
Great.
So could you tell everyone, about yourself and how and why you got into the field of science?
Well, I started out, and ever since I was born almost, I wanted to be an astronomer. And I went into that in college. But when I applied for jobs, I couldn't get a job because I was a female and it was male only. And so I went into another field, which was similar. That was mapping, and they were mapping other planets, so I was hoping to get into that. But I wound up being a cartographer for a while, and then I went with the DIA, and they were working with satellite photography, which wasn't exactly what I wanted. So anyway, soon after that, I got married and moved to Nevada, where my husband lived. And then I was able to get into the field of physiology and got a PhD in it. I was offered a fellowship, and so I continued to work in that or similar things. And I became a professor and also did research at a number of other institutions, like Ohio State University Medical School and University of Nevada and the University of Missouri and other places.
You've been a busy woman.
Yes, I have.
So how hard is it for a woman to get into the science field and to compete against the men? I mean, from when you started compared to today?
I think it's a whole lot easier because when I started, the jobs were male only, and I would walk in and try to apply, and they wouldn't give me even give me an application and say to leave because I wasn't supposed to be there. Now, they allow females in, but there's still quite a disparity. For example, they pay females less, and there's much less opportunity for advancement and that sort of thing.
Wow, that's sad. It's terrible because isn't it a proven fact that females are smarter than men?
Oh, well, I'll agree with that. Men won't.
Well, your book titled UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Misfortune, and Government Cover-Up. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your book and why you decided, to write about the lies and misfortune of the government cover-up? And what do you mean by all that?
Disinformation and government cover-up. Well, it's been 70 years since the modern idea of UFOs began, and it's still not, there's a lot of observations and evidence, but it's still not accepted by the government. It's still just in the range of private people and groups investigating UFOs. And what actually got me started was to writing the book. I had always been interested in astronomy, and I was interested in everything and continued to be, whether I could go into it or not. But I was interested in UFOs also, and SETI. I worked for a while in SETI, besides just the mathematical, physical astronomy, which isn't normal, I guess, for a scientist. And so I continued my interest in ufology, and I joined a number of groups, and I was an editor for a while I was the director of publications for MUFON and an editor for a local group. And so I was doing a lot of writing about UFOs. And one day I looked at all my writings and said, there's a book. And so after that, I needed to start organizing it and things, but that's basically how it started.
Well, what's the difference between a UFO and a UAP?
Probably nothing. I don't know.
That's what I figured.
I think there's two different names for the same thing, but maybe there's a technical difference.
Oh, okay. So what types of UFOs have your research has found, here in the USA and, around the world?
There's been all kinds of UFOs. They're usually presented as crafts or like rocket ships from another planet or something. But most of the ones I've investigated aren't too much like that. They're more like things that people see that may merge and disperse or break into two, or sometimes they come together and they don't make a sound, and just characteristics like that make me think they're not really a craft. And I think there's other things associated with them either, too, such as mind control maybe, and abduction and other things that aren't totally related to seeing a UFO.
Mm-hmm. Well, what cases have you worked on that have had the most evidence of UFO sightings or UFO landings?
One that I worked on in Ohio, I haven't worked on it too much, is called the Ravinia case. And it was an example of one where there were first reports of a very bright object in Michigan. Then these two policemen in Ohio heard the report, and they were just laughing about it. And they were to look at a car that was off the road, and they were doing that. And suddenly they saw this huge object over them with this real bright light. And they changed their mind about laughing about it. And they were pretty scared because there was just this big bright light over them. And they ran for their car and called into headquarters and reported it. The man in the headquarters told them to shoot it. And they didn't exactly do that. They were pretty scared. So while it started traveling and the headquarters told them to follow it, they were in contact with the headquarters the whole time. And they followed it through Ohio. It was pretty interesting because it seemed to know they were following it. It was about traveling at about 100 miles an hour, which is real slow for an aircraft. And sometimes if they didn't quite catch up to it, it would kind of stop and wait for them, which made them think it was paying attention to them. And it would also go high in the air over a city and then come back down low. And so they kept following it, and they kept reporting to headquarters, and other people were seeing it. There was a air base, airport, and they heard that jets were sent up to look over the situation, but they couldn't slow down to where the speed of the UFO was. And they also heard that it was on radar. And they went clear into Pennsylvania. And finally, they were running out of gas and everything, and the headquarters told them to come back, but several other policemen had seen it too. That was the Spar and Neff sighting in Ravinia, Ohio. And I thought that was an extremely good one because they were in contact with their headquarters all the time. They were seeing it.
Do they have recordings of the transmissions going back and forth between the officers and headquarters?
I think so.
Okay.
And they were really treated roughly by Project Blue Book, who, even though they had all this evidence, Project Blue Book told them that they'd seen Venus, which wasn't even like anything they'd seen. And they were made fools of, and it kind of destroyed their life.
Gosh, that's terrible.
I know.
Well, have you ever seen or had a UFO experience yourself, and were you able maybe to disprove any of what you've seen as like natural objects or weather phenomenon or man-made objects?
Well, I never saw anything that it was normal looking that I thought was a UFO. Once, I didn't report this, but once I was, have you ever heard of the Marfa lights?
Yes.
Well, once, Marfa lights are these reappearing lights that people see in the vicinity of Marfa, and usually to the south of Marfa. They actually have a viewing area built, and people normally see them sort of south in the mountains. But once I was north of Marfa, I was staying with some people that had a picture window that pointed toward Marfa and a deck that pointed toward Marfa. And so I saw it all the time and knew what it looked like. But once I saw a big light over Marfa, right over Marfa. and it seemed to stay there, and it would disappear and reappear. And later, after it was late at night, and I went to bed after a while. I was photographing it with a camcorder, and later I called the airport, and they said they hadn't seen anything, but they closed at about 5, and I saw it very late at night. So I just always wondered what that was, but I never reported it.
Now, the Martha Lights, they've been seen as far back as, 1800, 1700? Hasn't Native Americans talked about the Martha Lights?
I think so. I think it's a phenomenon that's been there for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. What do you know, or can you explain anything about Project Orange?
Project Orange. I can't think of it right now. I've heard of it, but I can't think of what it is.
Oh, okay. Well, what about Skinwalker Ranch?
Yes, I've read about it. And it has quite a... Pardon?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I guess there's quite a few really weird things that have happened there. I don't know if it happens all the time or if there's sort of an example of for a few years it happens and it stops and it happens again. But they've had one thing I particularly remember is that they put in cameras on posts and wired them in real good with tape and everything to see if they caught any of the UFO activity. And overnight, something took them down, took all the wiring out and everything, and even unwired the camera that was supposed to watch the other cameras. So that they had a lot of trouble investigating things due to reasons like that.
Wow.
They saw things like huge wolf-like animals that probably didn't exist. And once the owners came back and they looked at their bulls and thought, oh, these are fine bulls and everything, we hope nothing happens to them. And later they found they lost their bulls, and when they found them, they were all in one small building and looking like they were kind of hypnotized. And then they let them out, and they, of course, ran away. So there were a number of really odd things that happened like that.
Wow. Well, speaking of animals, what are your thoughts on animal mutilation? Have you had any documented cases that you've worked on, or could it be alien related, or is it just maybe some kind of experiment or government trying to throw people off?
Well, I've heard people talk about it. I have an experience. I'm on a farm, and animals die around here once in a while, and I kind of watch what happens to them. But the things that happen to them, I think, are buzzards, which go for areas like the soft spots, and coyotes. But I haven't seen anything around or investigated anything that had anything to do directly with animal mutilations.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of watch what happens naturally.
Yeah. Well, that's what a researcher does.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched off on alien abductions. What are your opinions about alien abductions?
Well, I guess a number of people report them, and then other people report having memory losses or missing time, but they don't know what happened. And so far as alien abductions, it's just unknown, and it could be. And I was sort of joking that maybe as a joke, maybe the aliens are getting bored with abductions, and instead they invented Facebook, and they can sit up there in their UFOs and just look at Facebook and find out everything about everybody. But I'm joking about sometimes they seem to be taking eggs and sperm, and you wonder what they're doing with that, maybe making people or something. And there's also a lot of metal things where they have ask people to remember something, and they sort of like they're monitoring their memories and things. But I really don't know of any concrete proof that anything like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I know if it happens to someone, well, they know it's true.
Right.
But it's difficult for anybody to prove.
Well, do you think it might be possible that throughout, the time that these abductees that have these UFO sightings could be maybe mistaken this for maybe a spiritual or angelic experience?
I think it depends on your viewpoint. I think maybe the same type of thing has been happening throughout human history, was interpreted that way maybe earlier, and then people have the idea of UFOs, that people are coming from other planets and in crafts and things, and so then people interpret it as UFOs, people that have heard of UFOs. But I think the same type of experience may have been going on for a long time, and it's interpreted in terms of your culture.
Mm-hmm. Well, if aliens are coming to Earth and have been to Earth, what is your opinion as to why they come here or have been here?
Well, I think that we may be fairly primitive. And like the Earth has been sort of blue for about maybe 4 billion years. And so intelligent aliens, planets that have good astronomy, better than ours and things, would have been aware of us for a long time. And our sun is sort of the type that might have planets with life too. And so I think across the universe, beings might have been aware that we're here, the possibility we would be here, and that sort of thing, and watching us. But we may be just too primitive to directly communicate with them. Like, it'd be hard for us to communicate with an amoeba, and maybe advanced beings would, they us in real simple ways, such as having us see a UFO, but not in more complex ways. I talked to a person that was director of a CETA place, SETI, and I asked him, why aren't they finding anything? Because you'd think, they'd find other civilizations. But he said that maybe we're so primitive that our methods of communication, such as radio and lasers and things, may be just a primitive stage, and that we'll be more advanced and have more chance of contacting other groups.
That makes sense. Well, what is your opinion about intelligent life being throughout the galaxy? And the universe. Do you think it's a high number, or maybe a low number, seeing how that scientists have estimated that the universe is 13.8 billion years old or something like that?
Uh-huh. Well, I would say if we're here, there's a good chance that somebody else is there. But I wouldn't have any idea whether we're the only type of life form that exists. There may be lots of other life forms, and like we're molecular, and maybe there's life forms that aren't molecular. And, for example, we're finding out about quantum mechanics. And with that, they have experiments where, with the entangled particles, where an entangled particle in one end of the universe knows what its mate is doing if it's clear across the universe instantaneously. And that would suggest that maybe our ideas of time and space are kind of primitive, and maybe more advanced beings are able to communicate in a lot of different ways than we would even understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, it kind of touched off when you was talking about aliens taking the sperm and eggs from humans. Have you found any evidence of, maybe any human hybrids within your research? And if so, can you explain?
I haven't directly investigated abductions. The one I'm most familiar with was the Hill abduction, and I know one of the scientists that studied that, and what she studied was Betty Hill's dress, and Betty Hill was wearing a blue dress when the abduction occurred, and then she hung it in her closet and she kept it, and the scientist was going to analyze it to see if she could find anything, and she found that some parts of the dress had turned pink, and this was where Betty said that the aliens had touched her, and she found more organic material, I think, in the pink areas, but she didn't find anything amazing like a new element or anything like that. It was just sort of that it was a little bit different, but that suggested that what happened was real.
Wow. Well, within your research, I take it that you speak to eyewitnesses with UFO encounters. How open are they to talk to you about their experiences?
Well, I've interviewed have been fairly talkative, but I don't think they want to go out in public and have anybody make fun of them and that sort of thing. I did a scientific study that I published in a journal where I asked people if they had sightings and to describe the sightings, and people went into great detail describing them. And then I also asked if they'd reported them. And I found out from that information that people generally don't like to report things because I guess people make fun of them and that sort of thing. People tell them they're lying and things. So there were a much smaller percentage of reports than there were of people that actually thought they saw something. Mm-hmm. But the people I had seen, most of the people have seemed pretty sincere, and I don't think they were lying or hoaxing or anything for the people I've interviewed, although I realize that happens.
Right. Well, within your research, have you found any type of patterns forming with all these UFO claims?
Any type of patterns?
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess one pattern I've kind of noticed is that it needs a lot more study, is that some people start out at a young age with seeing something odd, like a UFO or something, and then they have repeated sightings all through their life. And I think that's something that needs more study. And the questionnaires they have don't even ask if you've seen more than one or what ages you've seen them or anything else. And I just think that's something that needs more study, that repeater phenomena, because you just don't understand why it would happen. I mean, on the bell curve, most people don't see a UFO. A few people see one, and then very few people have seen a number of them. And it's hard, if there's some kind of a pattern there, it needs more study, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, have you found any correlation with, with occult and within the UFO phenomenon?
With the cult.
Uh-huh.
I don't understand your meaning.
Like these religious fanatics that may worship or try to pray to have or sacrifice or stuff like that to have a UFO encounter, or I mean, have you dealt with any people like that that you've interviewed?
No, I haven't. I've just interviewed people that had either individual sightings or sightings with other witnesses. I don't think I've interviewed anybody that belonged to a cult.
Okay.
I've interviewed, people that belong to like MUFON or UFO organizations, but that's not a UFO cult or religion type of thing.
Yeah, because I've read some of those online, and they're kind of weird. I'm just going to put that out there. They're strange people. No offense to them, but yeah, a little strange. Well, how is it possible? And I know that aliens, I'm sure they're well advanced to be able to travel back and forth to each galaxy or each star system and such. But what is your theory? How do you think they're able to travel such great distances?
Well, I think there's maybe a problem with the way people understand distances, because like I said, there's some quantum theory, quantum mechanics evidence that even time and space may not really exist, and that's in the realm of physics. But it would also depend on how long they live. And maybe we live around 70 years, but maybe some other life form lives for many, many centuries or a lot longer than that. And it wouldn't bother them to make trips here and there. And they probably have much faster ways of going than we do. And because if you're going at nearly the speed of light, you age a lot slower. And so if they had really fast ways to travel, they would not age as fast. And they may be sending out robots too, and drones and things like that. I mean, not our type of drones, but drones that can go to other planets and inspect and send information back.
Like an AI, maybe? Oh, okay. Well, what is a hyper civilization?
One that I'm thinking, I'm not sure, one that is able to use almost all the energy from their sun.
Mm-hmm. And what class, because I know that there's classifications for that scientists have classified intelligent life forms on whether they can use the power of their sun and so forth. What are those classes specifically?
I don't know, because I haven't studied it in particular.
Oh, okay.
I've just read, I think that that theoretically they think some civilizations can use all the energy from their sun, and they've had a way of enveloping the sun, and then they may send out signals from that. But I don't know that much about it.
Okay. This is something I talked about with Philip Mantle. I asked him, do you think it's possible we're living in a matrix? So I'm going to ask you that same question.
Well, that's a real good explanation for what's happening. And I just took a course from, I think it was Dartmouth or something, about reality and how it's influenced by different perceptions of science. And they're really seriously considering whether we live in a simulation of, like the Matrix, or whether our reality is actually real. And as civilizations advance, they can get better and better at artificial reality. And so I've read about tests. I think one of them was called Turing test and other things. It was written up, some of those tests were written up in Scientific American a few months ago on how you tell a simulation from reality. And I think if the entities that are putting you in a matrix or that sort of thing are very advanced, I don't think you'd be able to tell.
Mm-hmm. Well, with science being such a huge influence on Americans just recently, in a few past 30, 40, 50, 60 years, what is your opinion about how it seems like the government or teachers or schools or who may be, that seem to be dumbing down science? I mean, do you take offense? I know I take offense to it. I mean, what's your opinion about it?
Well, it seems like a lot of people seem to want to be dumbed down. I don't know why, but yeah, I think it's a very bad. It's very bad to do that. And
I agree, because here where I live in Southwest Virginia, I mean, it's pitiful that how, I mean, it's coal area, and it took science to be able to engineer and to be able to mine the coal, even though I don't agree with coal, even though I'm coal country, but and you cannot get these people to understand. If it wasn't for the engineers and all the scientists that know where to dig and where to go and how to process and how to get it out of the ground and so forth, they'd still be using a pick and a shovel and a mule.
Well, there seem to be a lot of people like that, a lot more than you'd think, and they seem to have a lot of power, such people, and I think that's pretty bad. That I don't know. You need a much better education system, I think.
Oh,
I think
I agree.
Our education is not doing the job it ought to be doing.
I agree 100% with that. Well, what's your thoughts on climate change? I know that's one of the big hot topics that it seems that they're trying to dumb everybody down on.
Well, obviously, if we're putting out a lot of chemicals such as carbon and methane and stuff, that has an effect, and they're finding that a lot of things like glaciers and things are melting, and big ice chunks are coming out of the North and South Pole. And so I would think I don't know if it's exactly tied to people, but I think there's a good chance it is, that if the whole Earth warms up just 1 degree, that doesn't sound much, but if the whole Earth warms up that much, it's a huge amount of heat, and that has a lot of effects such as melting glaciers, melting the ice caps, and a whole effect of changing the weight of the seas on the everything that may cause earthquakes or anything else, because the whole Earth is changing that way, and it also affects things like plants.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, for example,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think plants that are exposed to more carbon have less protein in their systems they manufacture less protein. I'm not sure about that, but I think I read that someplace. But anyway, go on.
Oh, I was just going to ask you your opinion about the Mandela effect.
Mandela.
Where people are like Fruit Loops is spelled a certain way as we remember as a kid, but it's spelled a different way now. Let me see what else. The Bearstein Bear, the way it's spelled is spelled different from what we remember. Just stuff like that. It's kind of like maybe parallel universes or either touching or causing a different effect. Because even Mandela, the reason why it's named after Mandela, there was people that remember that he died in prison, and even seen his funeral on TV and so forth. But which we know he got out of prison and lived to be president of South Africa, and so I didn't know if you knew anything about that or had an opinion about it.
Well, I think they've done studies on that, and they're doing them now with all the out facts and everything. That if you keep repeating a fact over and over, well, people that don't believe it may start to believe it, and that sort of thing. So, I think that's I think they're studying that sort of thing and trying to understand why people believe things that are obviously untrue and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So wouldn't that kind of be like brainwashing?
Yeah. Yeah. And if, you're subject to questioning everything, if somebody tells you everything you're learned is wrong and everybody's leading you astray aside from the person that's trying to take control of your mind and stuff, well, some people believe it.
Yeah. Boy, that's true. Well, in your opinion, how would an alien be able to communicate with a human? Do you think they would be able to speak like we do, or telepathic, or some other form of communication, maybe math?
It depends on the alien. As they're much more advanced than us, they could just make us view them as a human, and they could talk to us. But otherwise, the idea of SETI is that they may be sending radio signals out to us. And I worked at the Big Ear telescope that used to be here, and it was the one that received the WOW signal, which is still considered one of the best evidences of that maybe ET sending a signal. But they're saying that maybe that's the way to work, and they have big radio telescopes out searching for things, but they don't seem to be finding anything, which is surprising. But like the person said that worked on that we may just be in a little window of time, and maybe as we advance, the more advanced civilizations are communicating, but we're not on their wavelength yet, and we don't know how to do it.
Right. Well, I know you touched on the Project Blue Book a little bit. What is your opinion about Project Blue Book?
My opinion is that in general it was sort of a debunking thing. It purported to be a study of UFOs, and they did have a real good study that they contracted Battelle to do, Battelle Memorial Institute. I think there were some good leaders in that, such as Ruppelt, who took it kind of seriously and actually looked at the data and drew conclusions. But a lot of the leaders seem to be against UFOs and the type that would just say, well, if you saw a UFO, you're crazy, and didn't take it seriously. And a lot of what they did was debunking people who reported the UFOs, which wasn't good at all, because if you're really doing science, you would want to get all the facts, even if it is from observation. You wouldn't want to just throw something away and say, well, this doesn't exist. And I think a lot of the explanations for things from Blue Book were really bad, and they didn't fit the data at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, what has been your strangest or weirdest UFO case that has just been too amazing or funny to believe that you've worked on?
Let me think. One of them that I remember in particular that I worked on was called the Logan, Ohio Dancing Lights. And this was where a family that lived out in the rural area, in a farm area, looked out across their cornfield one day and saw a bunch of flashing lights that they were moving and dancing and flashing all over the cornfield. And this lasted for hours, and they called all kinds of authorities, such as the police and the airports and the TV. They broadcasted on the TV and everything else, and people came in to look at them, like policemen and things. And they just kept on blinking away, and nobody had any idea what they were. And they were interactive. For example, one of them followed a car down the road, and later, after they'd been there a while, well, some kind of a craft appeared, and then airplanes appeared, just the single engine type, and they were flying over the place in a grid. And one of the objects went up and followed an airplane for a while, and this just kept on. And they had all kinds of observers and all, and nobody knew anything about what caused it or anything else. So I thought that was a pretty good observation,
mm-hmm.
because they were able to report what was going on. They were able to have authorities come in and look at it, and the events kept on happening.
Wow. Well, that kind of goes into my next question. What has been reported as the largest crowd of eyewitnesses to see a UFO, and what was the location and of the mass sightings?
Well, I think one of them took place in New Guinea, and I think it was in the 1960s, where this minister and a group of people from a school saw this round object come down. I think there were more than one, and they saw beings walking around on top of it, and the beings waved and they waved, and it stayed there for a while. And I think a whole school saw this. It was called the Papua New Guinea sighting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a very large number of people that saw something.
Wow. Well, what's your opinion about the UFO that hovered over L.A. during World War II? What do you think that was? A UFO, or maybe Japanese or German aircraft?
I haven't studied it. I've heard of it, but I didn't read about it in detail, so I don't know.
Okay. Well, does the UFO phenomenon that you research, has it ever crossed over with anything with the paranormal or crypto phenomenon that you might could talk about?
Yeah, I think it does all the time, because I think that in some ways, I think that maybe it's a phenomenon. You don't know exactly what it is, but it makes people see things. And one of the things people see are UFOs. But I think it's something complex that can interact mentally with people, so that well, for example, I interviewed these two sisters, and they were their parent worked at Battelle and way up, and they said they saw a UFO land in their yard, and they were in the car coming home, and one of them said there were two of them, and one of them was in back of the other, and then even though they were both in the same car looking at the same thing, they saw different things. And it's like the phenomena can make people see things. I was thinking of another one, too. There was one instance where I think it was maybe the Randlesham Forest thing, where a man would would step forward, see a UFO, then he'd step backward and he didn't see anything. That there's something going on mentally with the phenomena that makes people see what the phenomena is telling them to see.
Well, that kind of makes a little sense, because I research the paranormal, and when we go on our investigations, I've noticed, strange lights in the sky when we'd be taking a break and stuff, and it's not a star, it's not a planet, it's not an airplane or nothing, and some of the other people in the group, they'll watch it and see stuff with me, and a good example is we were investigating near a battlefield up near West Virginia, and me and one of the guys were walking through the woods, and you can hear us on the recorder walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden, for like 20 seconds, we went from walking in the woods to sound like we were on a metal catwalk in a large building, and you could hear our voices echoing like you would in a large building. But we didn't see anything, we didn't feel anything, and it was just on the recording, and I can't explain how that happened. And that's the reason why I wonder if with the UFO phenomenon and the paranormal phenomenon, along with crypto and so forth, I wonder if there's just, they all tie in some way together.
Yeah, I think they do. Well, I guess the way they seem to tie together to me is that there's this big blotch of stuff you don't know and don't understand, and it can manifest as UFOs or religious sightings or anything else, and sort of project things into people's minds. Mm-hmm. There was one incident I remember of these two people were watching this UFO, and one of them see beings walking around, all kinds of beings, like tall Nordics and maybe reptilian and little fat, hairy things with messy hair. They were all walking around. And all the other person saw was lights moving around. And so the two people were having something way different that they were watching, even though they were looking at the same thing. Wow.
That's fascinating. Well, have you, within your research, have you found any evidence of the oldest known UFO reports and of abductions, and how far back and where do these reports come from?
Well, some people I know are working on one that they think happened in 1941, and I haven't kept up with it. But the Foo Fighters, in terms of the modern idea of UFOs, I think the Foo Fighters were the first evidence of something. But I think that before anybody heard of UFOs, they interpreted these things differently. And I guess back in the 1800s, people saw airships before they had blimps and that sort of thing. They thought they saw airships flying around. And these might have been UFOs. And maybe they were disguised as airships back then for our level, or maybe our interpretation through our culture would see something flying in the air and interpret it as a airship, whereas we now would interpret the same thing as a UFO.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, they say clear back in the Bible that there's the wheels within the wheel that Ezekiel saw, and that sort of thing. And even there's cave paintings of funny-looking things that suggest UFOs, so you don't know how far back it goes.
Well, yep, that was going to be my next question.
Oh.
Boy, good deal.
Yeah.
Well, are there any astronauts or any foreign space agencies that have come forward publicly about UFOs, that have seen throughout, all the years since they started going into space and, when they went to the moon also?
Well, I think Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, started a group of understand UFOs, and he sends questionnaires to people, and they're studying the idea. And I think Gordon Cooper said he either saw one or a close friend saw one. So I think there's several astronauts that have come forward about UFOs and not been negative.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are your thoughts about Area 51? Do you believe that the U.S. government has evidence of UFOs and extraterrestrials hidden, within the compound?
Well, my husband used to work in Area 51. It was before I was married to him. And what he mainly said is that it was all underground. It was very, very secret and compartmentalized. And he had a Q clearance. But there was a lot that he couldn't find out, and that he could be in a room with an aircraft and he wasn't allowed to look at it and that sort of thing. But he didn't say anything about aliens being buried there.
Wow. I didn't think I'd ever be able to talk to or know anybody that knew anything or actually even worked there. That's awesome.
Well, we published his release papers from the Air Force in my book, and the squadron he belonged to was a Area 51 squadron, so he can pretty well show that he was actually there.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I've read that supposedly there was an alien autopsy, and that it was a hoax. Is that true, or do you have any thoughts on the purpose of them hoaxing an alien autopsy?
Well, I forget who did it. I think his name was something like Centella or something like that. And they made like an artificial body, and then they made a film of somebody doing an autopsy. And I think that's all hoax.
Mm-hmm.
As I found out. But there's stories of there's bodies, and I'm in Ohio, and I've been around Wright-Patterson, and there's stories that at the crash at Roswell, they sent bodies to Wright-Patterson, and I think there's been reports that Wright-Patterson has big underground chambers, which I think is totally possible because I've worked in some areas like that, such as some of the atomic sites in Ohio, and they do have really big underground chambers. So I think it's possible it could be at Wright-Patterson. And the original ones were built for saving photographic material and probably for evacuation and emergency and things. But there's all these stories that they also had aliens stored in these underground chambers and vaults and things.
Dang. Well, which government that you might know of has the most files on the UFO phenomenon, and which governments do you think are more open about the UFO reports?
Well, we probably have the most files, and but I think there's countries that are more open about it, and there's some South American country, I can't think of what it is, that actually takes it seriously. And I think sometimes that France has, but in general, most of the countries take the same position we are, that there's nothing to it, even though I think the government has evidence that there is something to it.
Well, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. But do you think it's possible that there might be a worldwide government conspiracy to hide, the knowledge of UFOs, except the ones that are being more open about it? Do you think they're working together to keep it suppressed?
I don't know, because the world is composed of all these countries that are against each other. I mean, I don't even know why they have countries, but they have countries, and they are all trying to be in competition and outdo the other one. And so that if one of them knows about UFOs or knows something about it, they may think about, weaponizing this information and not telling the other countries. Or if they don't know anything about it, they may still want to kind of show that maybe they have captured UFOs and know something about it. So it's hard to say. I don't know if there's so much antagonism against from one country to another. I don't know if there'd be a worldwide thing of where they all agree on anything.
Yeah. Except money. Seems like it's all they want.
Okay.
Money. It's all about the dollar. Yeah. Well, since the Roswell crash, it seems like, especially here in the United States, our technology has increased 100-fold or more. Do you think that at that time that, maybe we reverse engineered the craft and we're able to jump ahead of so many countries in our technological advancements? Or do you think it just came down to the German scientists that came over from after World War II? And even then, how were they able to be so advanced, so far ahead of their time before, we even got caught up?
Well, Germany was just a little tiny country, and they were really advanced. But I worked at Battelle, and also I knew the archivist that Wright Patterson, and he was the person that did the research at Wright Patterson. I think it was Senator or Representative New Mexico that wanted a study done to see if there were artifacts at Wright Patterson and whether these would have been reverse engineered to make things for us. And he said he explored it all over and didn't find anything. But he was working for the government, and the government wouldn't want you to find anything anyway. So I don't know that. And at Battelle, they had some really good ideas on how to investigate UFOs. I mean, they were going to set up a study area and put some artificial UFOs in and see how they're observed for comparison, and then look for real UFOs, and with all kinds of instruments and things. But they didn't do the study. They just had it organized and thought about it. They didn't do anything, I guess, because the upper echelons of the government said, well, there's no UFOs, and there was no funding to study it anymore.
Wow. Go figure. Well, do you know of any UFO attacks possibly on any military equipment or military bases, aircraft or ships, etc.?
Well, they said that in some instances, UFOs have been over military bases and even changed the coordinates in the rockets that were supposed to, the intercontinental rockets that would be involved in an atomic war and everything, that they were able to change the coordinates, the targeting coordinates on the rockets. I mean, I've read that in books. I didn't investigate it myself.
That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
That's freaking scary.
Yeah.
Wow. When do you foresee any full disclosure of any UFO activity from either NASA or the United States government?
Well, I guess a lot of people have been saying ever since ufology began that there's going to be a disclosure, and there hasn't been yet. It's my impression that maybe there's some high. I've had security clearances, and there's top secret, and then there's a lot of clearances above that they're code word clearances, and these are compartmentalized, but there's probably some that are over all the rest of them, and the government could control what you think about UFOs or what's being announced or anything else by just having a very high security group that attends to UFOs.
Wow. Well, what are your thoughts on the unexplained lights in the background of the NASA moon landing photos and NASA's photos that look like structures on the moon?
I don't have opinion on that. I've read them and seen them, but I didn't study it in any detail.
Oh, okay. Okay. What's your thoughts on the ancient astronaut theory that aliens may have came here to help us, in our evolution of being human?
Well, I think it's possible. Coming out with all kinds of new data on evolution now, of human evolution, and they seem to be finding different humanoids as people evolved all along. And there's a lot of different ideas on evolution now. For example, people used to think of Neanderthals as some primitive people that became extinct, and now they're finding that most people, just about everybody that are not Africans, have some Neanderthal genes in their system, and so they're not extinct. We're part Neanderthal. So there's a lot of difference, but I just don't know whether that could happen or whether that's just the way we evolved.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think the religious ramifications of your research could prove of alien life and that reported UFO sightings are real?
I didn't understand your question.
What do you think the religious community would do or say if researchers like yourself and other ufologists are able to prove that aliens are real and that UFOs are real? What do you think that would do to the religious world?
Well, people have various gods, and these are supposed to be supernatural things, and it probably depends a little bit on their religion, but there would be a fear that if aliens appeared and they had all these powers of a god, people might think that their God isn't real, or that the aliens should take the place of a god, and that sort of thing. So I think it'd be for people that absolutely believe in their particular religions and are really hardcore, that this would be very devastating to them, because there would be somebody here with the power of God, and then they would be confused. And so I think, but, in a lot of religions, like a quote from the Bible is, the house has many mansions, and we're just a part of the mansions. So in some religions that think there's a lot more, that there could be a lot of other life besides us, that it might be more acceptable. So I think in some religions it would really have a devastating effect. But I don't think it would on every religion.
Yeah, I know in the area I live, they're very religious people here, and I was raised in a church and everything, but my views are not the same as what I was when I was growing up. I know I've talked to many religious people around here about it, and I've asked them. I said, science has proven that the universe is massive, and to think that an supernatural entity created just us. And I said, look at the pictures from the spacecraft that went to Pluto, and just that little bitty speck, that little blue speck is us. And to think that this is it, I think it's kind of arrogant. And they kind of get upset with me about it, but it's too massive for just to be mankind. To me, in my opinion, they have to be more. There's too much evidence pointing that there is more.
Well, I'd certainly agree with that. We're here. There should be other planets that are a whole lot like us, that have the same chemistry and make our form of life.
It kind of goes into my next question about, what is your opinion about, life coming from outer space, as far as panspermia?
Well, I think that's possible, because, we've been here for 4 billion years, and we have all kinds of life forms, and some life forms make tiny spores that can almost live forever, and they could go away when a meteorite hits and float across the universe, and we might be spawning life ourselves with viruses and things like that just contain DNA that some DNA can restore themselves after radiation and that sort of thing. So I think that's quite possible. I think there's a question of whether somebody deliberately put it here or whether there's just spores and things like that, some type of life form in space floating around from other planets that might have life. And so, and you don't know how complex life is. It may be that there's lots of forms that aren't anything like us and aren't molecular. And so I think, yes, I think that could happen. I think they ought to do some more studies of looking for life forms just floating around in space too. And I don't think they've had, so far as I know, they're not even studying it.
No, but that'd be great, something great to study.
Yeah.
Just floating around just around our Earth. That would be amazing.
Well,
I know
you floating around Earth, but there might be some other types too. So.
Well, I know you said you work for SETI. Can you explain, exactly what SETI does, and what you were doing, your type of work that you were doing when you worked there?
Well, the general idea is to communicate by radio waves with other planets, and to send a pattern, certain patterns that people of a certain level of intelligence would recognize, or just send any signal that might be a little different from what's natural. And so I think they use a wavelength of hydrogen or something and send signals, and they're hoping that other beings do the same thing, so they have all these big telescopes around listening for radio signals that might have a pattern, and thus show that they're made by intelligent entities or beings. And so far as I know, they haven't really found anything. I think recently they found something, and they're trying to explain a few, but I don't think they've really found anything, unless it's secret.
Yeah, it probably is. They're really good at keeping secrets. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever read or known of anyone finding any unexplained Martian fossils anywhere in the world? Because I know recently, I think a few weeks ago, I seen where they found a body of some kind of humanoid. I think it was in South America, maybe Chile. I don't know if you heard about it or read anything about it, but are there any other fossils that you may know about there that they kept hush hush that may not be human?
Well, I think that body was a hoax, from what I read. I think, they find there's pieces of Mars here, and they look for meteorites, especially like in icy areas like the South Pole, where it wouldn't be mixed in with the dirt. And I think they analyze those meteorites to see the composition of Mars. But I don't know. I don't think they found advanced organic compounds. In some asteroids, like Ceres, they found examples of organic compounds, and suggesting that there might be life. And for example, that some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, they're a long ways away and wouldn't get a lot of sunlight, but they might have internal heat, and some of them are thought to have water, be a body with water around it, and the water's frozen. And they've questioned whether there might be some form of life there.
Wow. Well, if you could, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't think they found any actual bodies of aliens, though.
Okay. Too bad. That'd be exciting if they did. Yeah. They'd keep that hush hush.
Yeah.
If you could be with an alien, what would be the first question you would ask it, and if you could communicate with it?
Well, how could I become more advanced and more advanced and more advanced and understand more and improve myself so that I would not only be more advanced but continue to be more advanced too? I guess that's what I'd ask them.
Mm-hmm. That'd be a good question.
The important thing would be my brain.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what to ask. I'd be like, first after I got my chin off the floor.
Yeah.
Well, in your opinion, what is the biggest cover-up of the UFO phenomenon?
Oh, That's hard. I think there's a lot of things that might have been covered up. I think a lot of the debunking is just cover up. For example, that what I told you about the Ravinia sighting, it was a real good case where the policemen were in communication with their headquarters all the time and everything. And then Blue Book said they saw Venus. Well, that's a pretty big cover-up because they just didn't look at the facts at all. I don't know, Roswell would be a big cover-up, and there's just cover-ups all through the... Let me see. I was thinking of something. I can't think of it right now, but I think there's a lot of, for example, they have these debunkers and disinformation people, and one of them was called Collins, and I can never remember the other one. Who provided disinformation to people, and just lied to them and gave them disinformation, and they were supposed to spread it around, and they drove somebody named Benowitz crazy, and even admitted that they gave him a whole lot of disinformation and intended to make him look crazy. I can't think of the name. I can never remember the name of the person. Doty. It was, I forget his first name. Doty was a government agent that admitted he gave disinformation to people.
Wow.
And I think that's a form of too.
Goodness, that's terrible.
Mhm.
Well, what has been your biggest regret as a UFO researcher, if you have any?
Oh, my biggest regret is that I don't know anything about him. I've been studying him for a long time, thinking about him, reading about him, and investigating myself, but I don't know a thing about him. As an academic, when I study things, I know more about them. But with UFOs, I've studied, and I don't know a thing more about them. I don't have any idea what's going on.
Sounds like me in the paranormal field. I have no idea. I know we get this and that. I can't explain it, but there it is.
Yeah.
Well, within your research, have you dealt with any crop circles? And if so, what is, if not, what's your opinion about crop circles?
Well, I've investigated one that was a big crop circle. It wasn't exactly where anybody could see it. And I think it was in wheat or soybeans or something. And it was a large one that was just to whirl around. But I didn't figure out anything about it. But I've also investigated burn marks, that sort of thing, and studied them in detail. And one I studied was on a farmer's field, and the farmer and his wife were total non-UFO people that didn't believe they existed or anything. And the farmer found this big burn across his field thing because all the plants were standing upright, and they were charred black right down into their roots.
Whoa.
And he reported it alfalfa, and he reported the fire chief. Well, the fire chief said that alfalfa doesn't burn. And when they found it at that time, it was green alfalfa, and it was very wet around there too, and it's not like anything would burn. And I did some chemical studies with a professional chemist who did a spectrograph of the ground, and he couldn't find anything like maybe somebody put in pesticides or gasoline or anything like that. And so it's a mystery how this burn happened. We couldn't find any cause for it.
Wow. Were there any radiation or anything like that?
There wasn't any evidence of it, and we talked to Bud Hopkins about it, and it was like the one that he studied in one of his books, that this family had this big burn sort of that occurred. I think he started his book with it, and he said this was like that, but we were unable to, using scientists to figure out what happened.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What is your opinion about current evolutions of quantum physics? Will we be closer to discoveries which can help, partially to explain some of the phenomenon related to UFOs?
Well, I think so, because by the old Newtonian physics, the universe just sort of worked like clockwork, and you could predict what was going to happen from the past and all that. And I think now it's less deterministic, and you see everything as just sort of as possible positions and possible localities, but it's actually non-local, and your material, like quantum and something, is just something statistical. It may be anywhere. And so anyway, the old reports, such as where people say beings or lights or things went to a wall or something, that would have been impossible by the old physics. And that's the way it's normally interpreted. But with the new quantum physics, well, they have the principle of non-locality, and things do go through barriers. And we're not very advanced at doing anything like that, but maybe something that's more advanced can go through walls and able to control that sort of thing. Because it would be possible, quantum theory mechanics, but we wouldn't be able to do much of that, but somebody more advanced might be able to.
That could be what I see. That could be some of the evidence. That's the reason why I think some of the evidence that we get and other people that get video showing something moving through a wall, like I told them, it may be some type of wormhole or parallel universe, something other than just a spirit. It could be something else. That's the reason why I look at it going that way. A lot of these groups, they mostly just look at the spirit of someone. I'm looking at it a whole different broad spectrum. And normally when I bring my theory up to when I speak at these events and Q&As and stuff, people sit there and they look at me like I'm crazy.
Crazy because they're coming up with all kinds of crazy things that in quantum mechanics that are actually tested out and are real.
Well, that's awesome, because even when I was, younger and seeing things and stuff like that, everyone would call a ghost or spirit. I often wondered if it was something more than just that. It's just too simple of a definition when it could be so much more. And the more I dig, the less I know. The less I understand.
I have that. Yeah, but I think, some of them say, well, it's spirit, and you can't understand and you have to believe. Well, whatever God you have, God gave us brains and we're supposed to figure out things. And it seems like you should apply science to that too.
Yeah, that's true. Well, if UFOs are coming here, where do you think that they are coming from? And please don't say space. I'll be a little more direct here. I know when I've asked some people that question, they're like, space. I'm like, okay. Smart ass.
Okay, I'll try not to say that. they may be here all the time, and maybe people don't even know it because we have limited senses. And they may be here laughing at us, and we just don't know it because we just see particular things with our senses. But there may be a whole lot going on that we don't sense at all. And so, if you say space, well, that could be, you think of someplace outside, but it may just be here, and we don't know it. And I imagine the UFO phenomenon is made out of a whole lot of different things, too. Maybe some of it is spacecraft or something like that, and maybe some of it is just something, big blob of stuff that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, with so many, researchers, out there in the UFO community, have you ran into any researchers that, are filling people full of bull caca and misleading, everybody with the information that they're sharing?
Yeah. For example, I was at Wright-Patterson once. My employer sent me there, and I put an ad in the Wright-Patterson newspaper, the Skywriter, and asked for informants. And we found one who was named Robert Collins, and he was sort of like a government spook. For example, when we met him, we were supposed to meet him in a restaurant, and we were in the restaurant, and he didn't show up, and we wondered what's going on. And so finally we left, and he got up to leave, and right there he was, and he knew us. And he worked with Doty, the person that supplied openly admitted he supplied disinformation to people. Collins had been in a big TV show called UFOs Live, I think, something like that. And he and Doty appeared as silhouettes with their voices altered, as if to give the impression that they were deep government people who were leaking secrets and that sort of thing. And so, yes, I've met several.
Wow. I kind of figured that there was a bunch of them out there like that.
Well, I knew that he was. I mean, I didn't know when I met him who he was, but then I found out who he was later.
Well, during your research, have you ever came upon a case that, has led you into an unexpected direction?
Yeah, I guess in cases where people see lights and they'll see the light turn into something, that has led me to think that there's some mind control going on, that something can make you see what it wants you to see.
Mm-hmm. Well, how has your thoughts or experiences, changed since you started your research on the UFO phenomenon?
They really haven't, because when I started the research, I thought, I'll never understand this. And now, after much research, I have the same opinion. I don't understand anything. So I get such an answer.
Sorry.
That's what.
That was a great answer. Sorry, but I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. That's a good one, though. See, I have a good time on my show. I'm sorry. Everybody comes on here, I try to, lighten the mood, because some people come on here and they're just like, all business and business, which is fun. It's great. I'll learn, and I want to learn, and I want to know, but I still like to lighten it up a little bit.
We have a good sense of humor.
Yeah, I do. I sometimes it gets me in trouble, especially at a funeral or a wake. It ain't that I get nervous around dead people or nothing. I just get nervous around people being so sad. And my trigger when I see somebody sad is to try to make them happy. And I don't know how many times my mom has sat there and elbowed me and kicked me in the leg, telling me to shut up.
Well, I have that trouble too, because I've been in a number of funerals, and sitting up in front where people can see you. And for some reason, I'll start laughing, which is totally inappropriate. Maybe it's like you. But anyway, then I have to pretend like I'm crying to sort of disguise it, and I don't know why I do that. I hope I get over it, but that's happened to me. So I understand what you're talking about.
Oh, well, last December, a good friend of mine passed away, and I was sitting in the back of the church with some of my friends, and I was talking about all the funny shit that Tom used to do, and how some of his sayings were just off the wall, and because he was an older man, and I thought of him like an uncle or a grandpa, and you know, I had like 3 rows back there just giggling, and everybody turned around looking at me going, shh. I'm like, sorry.
But in some cultures, they say let's celebrate their life instead of being sad. Although you're pretty sad when somebody dies.
Yeah, and see, anyway, I'm that way. I'd rather celebrate their life. When my dad passed away, it'd be 25 years next month. That devastated me. I went 12 years, you know, down a dark road, and when I finally got myself, you know, back together, I'm like, I'm going to celebrate life. I'm going to celebrate the people I love life. I'm not going to let it destroy me like this no more. And I don't think everybody else likes my philosophy about it, but hey, it works for me.
Well, you probably brighten up other people. I mean, if they're laughing, they have trouble being real sad, but then they will be when they're not around you. But that sounds good.
Yeah, I try. Well, how do you train someone, you know, to be a UFO researcher, and what words of wisdom and advice would you give a new researcher that just started out?
Well, I think actually my research has been a little bit different from everybody else's because I'm in science, and I've actually done some studies and reported them in scientific journals. And that's not what everybody does, but I've just used statistics to study UFOs, for example. I went around asking people if they thought they'd seen a UFO, and a number of people had. Then I asked them if they reported it, and nearly everybody said no. And so I had the facts of think they see UFOs, don't necessarily report them. And I wrote that up in a paper and published it. But I don't think that's a general way people do things. I think so far as advice, MUFON has a training manual and gives people tests on what they do. I guess my advice would be just to listen to anything, no matter how weird it sounds, and collect all the information you can, any way you can, and record it, would be my advice.
Well, that sounds like great advice. My advice when people ask me about getting into the paranormal field, don't. It's many hours to sit here listening to audio and watching video, and it's rewarding if you find something. If you don't find anything, it's kind of like, well, I just spent 3 days sitting here at my desk and didn't get nothing.
Well, that's what I feel about UFOs, that I'm not getting anywhere, but I think even if you don't find hard or information or be able to prove anything, you've still got data, and you can still analyze it in a scientific way. And so I think that even if you don't understand UFOs, you can still study them by using science. So I don't feel completely defeated.
Oh, I love what I do. And I know, hopefully, I hope one day that with all the information, data, and photos, audio, so forth that I've collected, and maybe someone will see something or hear something I missed and might be able to crack something. I hope, but
Well, that'd be very good.
It would be, and it would. To me, I think it would shock the paranormal world if it showed that there's a correlation with the UFOs and crypto and all of them together. Like I keep saying that I think there is. And, the ufologists and UFO researchers that I've spoke to, they all have a consensus that, yeah, they see a pattern there also.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I guess the whole idea is that there's something there that I don't understand. That's my central idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how to. But I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Anything's possible. Well, almost anything.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. Well, how supportive is your family with your work? Do they kind of like, they got your back, or they sit there and go, "Oh, come on, really? Not another UFO." I kind of get that.
Well, I think some of my family has had some experiences, and so they don't laugh at me too hard. But what I get the most negative attitude from is my relatives. They're scientists, and they will say, "Oh, this can't be. This is impossible. You're crazy," and all that. But for example, my cousins will say, "Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. Therefore, nobody can get here." Well, that's kind of ridiculous because even in quantum mechanics, something can go faster than the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get a lot from scientists, but I think people that have had some experiences are different because they're a lot more open-minded. But I get harassed.
Yeah, I understand and I feel your pain.
You felt it yourself quite a bit.
Oh yeah. Well, when I first started, I got this one uncle. Every time I see him, he's like, "Have you seen any spooks lately, Rod?" And I'm like,
"Yeah, I've had that."
You get that too, huh?
Yeah.
And what I always tell him, I'm like, "Well, I've seen he'd tell me, "Oh, it's just bullshit, Rodney. You thought in your head." And then I show him or let him listen to something, and then he's like, "It's just a trick of the camera." I'm like, "What? Hey, I ain't that good."
Yeah. Well, you wish with people like that a UFO would land right beside them and somebody crawl out and say hello.
Smack them right in the mouth. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Just, bam. I'm real, buddy.
It's what they deserve.
I agree with you. So what do you do? What do you do when you're not so busy? Because it sounds like you're either A, very busy, or B, been extremely busy.
Well, I'm retired, and a lot of my friends just retire and hang around. But I can still do things, and so I'm also in writing, and not about other things besides UFOs. And I have a free farm, and I farm some, and I make videos, and Google pays me for some of them. So I'm into a number of things, and I take a lot of pictures. It's a hobby, but I've had them on TV and in magazines and things. And I'm on a farm, so I take a lot of wildlife videos and that sort of thing. So I have a lot of things to do. I'm not hanging around doing nothing.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, we're running out of time. I mean, we got about 8 minutes. So what are your plans for the rest of 2017? And, do you have any special projects that you're, working on, or any panels or anything that you're going to talk to or discuss your book or UFOs?
Well, I have a lecture coming up Saturday, and then I have several more interviews coming up. And I don't exactly know because some of these just pop up. I'm also doing some more research on some of the things in my book and looking more into where we reported a Roswell witness. And I have a big sound that was heard all over about a fourth of the country that happened at the same time as a UFO wave. And I'm still studying that. And I'm go to out west near and look around Roswell and interview people, and also interview people at White Sands and that sort of thing. So I'm doing things beyond what I have in my book now.
Oh,
and then
that's great.
Just right here in my neighborhood, I found people I know that I thought would be totally negative on UFOs that have actually had sightings and think there's something to it. So that's pretty amazing.
That sure is. When your community, accepts you and supports you, that always helps. I wouldn't know nothing about that, but it does. My community. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I found out this person that I didn't know had any interest in UFOs or anything, and I found out that she and her son had been driving down a freeway and had seen this huge UFO that just covered a whole field. It had lights around it and everything. But they didn't stop. They just kept on driving and didn't pay attention to it.
Wow.
But anyway, I was that because I know her pretty well. And she never said anything about UFOs until then.
Well, one more quick question you made me think of, since you was talking about sound. Have you seen or heard the videos that these ungodly sounds are being heard throughout different locations around the world? That sounds like horns or trumpets or something like that.
Well, I've heard of that, and I don't know what causes it. This sound was just a huge sound that covered a wide area. And I had a debunker that said it was an SR-71 sonic boom. But he gave me some graphs and things of where it was supposed to be, and all these graphs didn't make sense to me at all. So I don't know. And, yeah, I know what you mean because I've heard of that, but I don't know what causes it or anything else. But I think people hear it sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I've watched some of the videos, and it's kind of creepy. It's like, what in the world is that? If you heard something like that around here in Southwest Virginia, people would literally crap themselves. They'd freak out. I'd be out there with the recorder going, I'm videotaping it. Look. Well, since we're down to about 3-4 minutes, if anyone is interested in finding out more about you or have any concerns or questions or thoughts or comments, and along with how can I get a copy of your book or books, and get in touch with you? You got a website or anything like that, or just on Facebook or email, or how do you communicate with the world?
Well, the main way is through Facebook, and I'm on Facebook with Irena Scott or Irena McCammon Scott, and I can take questions from people that haven't befriended me. They can just look at my Facebook page, send messages. If they want my book, they can order it through Amazon.com. And I have a website that I'm still working on. It's called irenascott.com. And they can look at that, too, and see the books that I've written and get more information about my book and order my book, too.
Well, that's awesome. And Dr. Scott, I appreciate you coming on the show, and nothing but respect for the hard work you've done and doing. And you're welcome to come back anytime. I got hundreds of questions I could ask you, like I did Philip. Philip, I had to cut him into 2 shows because he's like, Rodney, you're wearing me out. He's like, I gotta go, buddy. And I'm like, no, don't.
Well, you seem to be full of questions.
Oh, I
very
am.
honored that you invited me to be on your show, and thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and it's an honor and a pleasure having you on. And like I said, you want to come on any time before I get a hold of you again, just give me a shout out, and we'll get you on the show.
Well, good. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're a very good interview.
Well, thank you. I try. Not bad for an old country boy.
No.
Well, Dr. Scott, you have a good night. And again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. And it was a very good interview. And you're good at this. So keep on.
Oh, well, thank you. I got that from my mama's side of the family, the gift of gab.
Yeah, it sounds like you have it.
Yeah.
That's
I
good.
tried to be a salesman one time, but I sucked at it because I just wanted to stand there and just shoot the crap with everybody. So they fired me.
So you're in the right field now.
Yep, I found my calling, I think.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Well, Doctor, you have a good night. You have a good weekend, and you take care of yourself.
And you do too, and thank you very much.
Okay, good night, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for us tonight. I want to thank Dr. Scott for coming on the show, and thank everyone that took the time to listen in. I'd like to give a big shout out to the Vibe Radio Network and to Holly and Ryan for putting up with me, and Robin when she's here. Also to all the first responders and our men and women in the armed services, thank you for your service. Our guest for next Thursday night, September 21st, will be Gary Cargill. Gary is a comedian and actor, locked and loaded with an arsenal of jokes, one-liners, observations, characters, and one-of-a-kind personality. Boy, we're going to have fun with him. Gary tours to sold-out crowds nationwide as part of the Southern Mama Comedy Show. He's also a well-connected and in-demand featured stand-up comedian in the metro Atlanta, Georgia area. Gary can also be seen on YouTube on his channel, Gary Cargill, where you can find his popular sports comedy character, Coach Crocker. Everyone can go to our Facebook page, Within the Chaos, and don't forget to like our page to see our upcoming guests along with past shows, postings, and you can also go to my website at www.blackdiamondps.org or blogtalkradio.com/Within the Chaos. Thanks again until next week. Everyone have a safe weekend and have a good night. And let me find a playlist. Oh, there we go. Hi.
I grow up, I want to make a pizza with the most cheese and the most pepperoni at the nation's best price, $6. It's going to be the best pizza ever.
Sorry, kid. It's been done. Introducing the new Little Caesars Extra Most Bestest Pizza. A large pizza with the most cheese and the most pepperoni at the nation's best price.
But my mom said...
Shh! This much cheese and pepperoni is what dreams are made of. Come get a large, hot and ready Extra Most Bestest Pizza for just $6, only at Little Caesars.
Pizza, pizza.
At participating locations plus tax.